we will start off with the headliner, which is DCeased Dead Planet issue 1. Tom Taylor writing with Trevor Hairsine on the art. Obviously, the same team, same duo from the original book. And I would say this has a lot to live up to, not necessarily because of the original DCeased, but because Unkillables was so freaking good.
Yeah.
This has to step up a little bit.
You know, I know these are smaller, like, miniseries, right? They're all about 7. You know, the other one was 3. But these almost just feel like next chapters and are ongoing at this point. And then I read the what's the, I always forget the name.
Hope It Walton?
Yeah, it wasn't. So I read that earlier in the week because I put it off from last week. And then I read this, and there were so many overlapping that I was like, did Taylor do this on purpose? Like,
probably.
because
honestly, it kind of feels like they're trying the Hellboy model sort of thing with these series.
Well, yeah, but they also feel like, I don't know, this could just be called DCeased instead of the subtitles, and then it feels like an ongoing at this point, you know.
Yeah.
So even though there's breaks in between or whatnot, I mean, I guess you're right with the Hellboy model or even the Image model, where they just, when there's a story, it'll come back out.
Yeah, and it doesn't even feel like there's been that much break time between them, because there was only like a month or 2 off after the first one until we got Unkillables, and obviously that was every other month.
Right.
I mean, I think it's basically as simple as they put out DCeased. It was probably just meant to be like a one-off thing, but it did really well. So very quickly it was like, okay, did you have more ideas for this? And Taylor probably said, yeah, I do have more ideas. Let me do more ideas.
Yeah, we're gonna rip your hearts out and show it to you, Mola Ram style.
Yeah.
In this one.
So this is actually following up. This is years later, 5 years I think it said. And basically the story is kickstarted. I mean, there's a couple of pages of Constantine being miserable in the Oblivion Bar, but the real kickstart to the story is that Cyborg's head, and he's still kind of active, he's still alive, just his head, sends out a signal for help to Earth 2, as we find out it's called, in Morse code. And we come here, and so I think it was David, the one who makes Connor Reed Red Hood, who said to me this week that this is kind of what 5G probably should be, and that we cut to Earth 2 and we have John as Superman, we have Damian as Batman, and it's them operating together. And again, Taylor, as he often does with his dialogue, very quickly makes it very endearing. And something as simple as Damian wanting to pull out spleens, but then them debating if they even have spleens. And
and then John being his father's son, like to a T, dealing with trying to have the diplomatic, and Damian, I don't want to say he's just being Bruce's son, he's being Damian, right? That headstrong doesn't look before he leaps. And they still have that dynamic even as because they're not quite adults, right? They're early 20s, so they're young adults. And so it's still familiar enough of the John and Damian, but they're in their father's, footsteps.
Yeah, it definitely feels like they've still got their own banter. Like when Damian kicks one of them, and you just hear John go, "What was that?" And he's like, "Nothing." Sounded like a boot to the face, and he's just stupid super hearing.
Yeah.
Still sounds like them, but they've been forced to grow up quicker than they really should have. And we found out that Lois is the president of Earth 2, which I'm sure Matt is delighted by.
As you do. Yeah, of course.
But they get this signal, of course, from Cyborg, and they, they're sort of debating whether or not to go back. Ollie thinks it's maybe a bad idea, but he's essentially outvoted. Like, Dinah says, "Oh yeah, right, Ollie, we should vote," and he's like, "That's not what I was saying."
Well, I like that he said too. She's like, "Well, you voted to come too." He's like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna be the only person with my hand down to the kids. Like, I have to set an example still." So I like how he's trying to be the role model, which Ollie is not a role model. So I like that dynamic there.
Yeah, he's always been the intentional outsider, the rebel to the system. So him here being the old man, essentially having to be the example is tough for him.
Yeah, and that's just like, I'm not gonna do that. And him and Canary have this real nice moment with the sword, which I had spaced about. And then when I saw the green edge, I was like, oh yeah, this was that sword. The God Killer, basically.
I loved and hated this entire scene because I'm like, oh, this is so good, and then I'm like, oh, this is too good.
Yep.
Yeah,
get your hackles up.
The scene ends with them being like, I'll bring you back, and I'm like, oh god, they're not coming back.
Well, this is the thing. We ended DCeased, and so many people die in DCeased that we get to this one, and it's like, yeah, the people who survived that first time, yeah, they may actually die now. Like, those people who you thought were safe are probably doomed.
When you look at the first page, there's a whole string of Justice League that's been zombified. Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Flash, Aquaman, Martian Manhunter. Like, I'm like, that's a heavy hitter. That's like almost Morrison's Big Seven there. Green Lantern. Although it's Hal, not Kyle. So yeah, the stakes are there, and you have this new generation, and Dinah as the Green Lantern, which is still something that's uniquely Tom Taylor.
Yeah, but oddly fitting. Yeah. But like you said, the scene was really sweet. Like her getting down on the knee and presenting him with the sword because she has the magic ring, and he's like, I don't have anything. And she's like, yeah, I get it. Your big ego. Here's a sword, so you could feel manly and whatever.
Here, you can hold the sword. It's wielding a sword. I like that. Like, they have their banter. Like, Taylor is in that. There's certain writers that they have banter nailed. And I think safe to say Taylor's probably the top of them right now. For me.
I think it's impressive as well that he manages to make banter feel unique across different characters. It's not just plug and play Tom Taylor banter.
No, because Harley banter is completely different than Dinah and Ollie banter.
Yeah, it's so different.
And then even DCeased Harley that we got to see in the first part versus Harley and Suicide Squad's different. So
yeah.
Yeah, and so Superman's still eating the sun, so they mention that the Earth is actually gradually getting colder because the sun is essentially being consumed by evil.
Yeah, because Kilowog's on guard duty.
Yep.
And so basically they relieve Kilowog, or they relieve the Green Lanterns, and they go in, and although before they do get in, there's like something coming from the Earth, and I'm sure Matt's heart broke for this, which is Crypto survived and flies out to John.
Yeah, greets him, and I went, oh no. Now I'm doing the thing my wife does where the dog better survive or I'm going to eat this. Because now you just introduced that. Yeah, it gets dodgy there towards the end for Crypto, I gotta say.
Yeah, so they find Cyborg's head, and he's kind of speaking in broken patterns. They have to use the lasso to kind of even get anything out of him.
Did you guys try to decipher the Morse code before they do it in the book? Because I did.
No. Matt, you're such a nerd.
I know. Sorry. I was like, that's Morse code. Let me. So I pull up a thing, and I was like, oh, it's JL. And then I turned the page and went, oh, well, he just would have told me.
Of course he was going to tell you.
I was like, there's something more to this. The dollar bill's talking to me.
If it had got to the end of the issue and it hadn't told us, then maybe I'd have looked.
Yeah, I can't help it. I'm like Ron Swanson when it comes to scavenger hunts. I see a puzzle. Even if I'm not confident I'm going to figure it out, I'm going to try.
Yeah, so something that's been kind of a running theme actually ever since it happened in Killabos is that Wonder Woman makes a big entrance, right? A big scary entrance. Their ship's going down. Immediately things are going bad, and then you get this full page spread of Wonder Woman just ripping into Oliver. And and obviously the earlier in the issue set you up for the pain of this. It was like, no, what are you doing?
It caught me off guard because I thought it would be later in the series.
You're not right away, exactly.
Yeah. So here's the thing though, a little detail I love. I don't remember if this was in the first volume, but I loved the Canary Cry being green now. That was such a simple little change to like what that usually looks like. Yeah. Give it a vibe that I really liked. So Dinah goes absolutely mental on zombie Wonder Woman. She's big giant hand with the green and then like the sword, and she's just going for it. And John comes in and basically blocks the sword hit, gets stabbed through the shoulder, which actually makes me kind of worry that when they pull the blade out, that some of the blood from Wonder Woman might go into John's bloodstream, and that could be like an issue they have to deal with.
They keep making a big deal like with Lois and John that you were frustratingly your father's son, and so I'm just like, do not give me evil Superman again.
On that subject, I love that line where he said, stop calling me Superman. She says, well, stop earning it then. That was a nice beat.
That's great.
So the big cliffhanger though is that what Cyborg's trying to tell them, and John's the only one who's heard it because of the super hearing, which again was brought up and we reminded of us all that we had super
It's one of
hearing.
those things that they wouldn't have needed to, because everyone knows Superman has super hearing, right? So they didn't need to, but just because okay, this is John, we're just going to clarify in case you're not familiar that it's the same.
Yeah. Well, even if you know, it's not even just so much about that. It's just that you're thinking about it. So when this happens later, it clicks into place so naturally without even having to think about, oh, he's got super hearing. But it's like the final line is, well, there's a bit of narration after it technically, but the final spoken word of dialogue is Dinah, there's a cure, which then makes me go, but all the people they had to like rip apart or kill because they were dangerous, like all those people could have been saved.
Yep, and that's where the horror of it comes from, right?
That's the tragedy, yeah.
Yeah, so
but even more than that, what if they do cure Wonder Woman though? How many people is Wonder Woman killed that she's going to have to remember killing if she remembers it?
If she remembers, which I feel like you would, just for the sake of the story potential, right?
Yeah, the drama, the misery is too much to ignore.
Honestly, I'm not sure if Wonder Woman survived this or not. Because obviously it goes through John's shoulder, but it looks like it's through Wonder Woman's throat.
Yeah, it kind of does. Which again makes us. I mean, which Dinah's going to have all these complex feelings of, well, she just killed Ollie, but then she finds out, well, maybe she doesn't actually have to die. We could have brought the real Wonder Woman back.
Maybe there's the hope that Ollie can be saved now because he's not in pieces.
Yeah.
No, he's just ripped into, and so the other thing that gets me here too with the cure of Wonder Woman is she's way too big of a threat to leave just hanging out around there. You know what I mean? Like even if you can't cure her, unless you completely dismember her, she's going to be trying to kill you. Like she's not going to stop.
Yeah.
So,
and I think what I really like about this as well is it gives us a sense of hope of there's a cure, which means we are going to be crushed.
Whoa. Yeah, I was going to say, what do you mean you like that it gives us hope? No. I hate that it gives us hope because it's just hope that they can take away and tarnish later.
I like it from a storytelling potential in Tom Taylor's hands because I know, this is going to be so much more brutal than I thought it was going to be.
That's the double hit of this, though, is that you're like, oh my god, there's hope. But then you realize, you think about how many have already died and how much this could have helped millions of people.
You know who Tom Taylor is? Have you ever seen that video of the guy that gets the Frisbee and then throws it over the highway? And his friend's like, what the F, Kevin? That Tom Taylor is the guy throwing the Frisbee, but the Frisbee's our hope. And he has it, and he's just going to throw it over the highway. You know? So, yeah. It's one of those things about horror. I remember as a kid realizing I didn't like horror because it made me feel bad. And then, as I got more into like slasher movies that are just kind of roller coastery, fun, disposable, it still doesn't sit well with me. The bad feelings of horror, like the movie The Invitation, has something like that. Fantastic movie. Ending makes me feel like garbage. So, and that's all good horror, right, Pete?
Oh yeah, misery. If you're not feeling miserable by the end, it's not his job. So, no, unsurprisingly, DCeased Dead Planet is, it's just a solid, fantastically done issue with heavy hitting beats, great character interactions and moments, and I can only imagine kind of the beats that it's going to hit by the time we get a couple issues into it, because I will still say I think issues 2 and 3 of Unkillables are still my two favorite things out of the entire DCeased saga, if you will. But plenty of time to get there. Plenty of time to make me care about things.
Yeah, and this is this away. 7 issues as well?
It is, yes. So it's an extra issue to the first one.
Yeah. Well, because the first one technically had 7 because you had the Constantine.
The one shot.
So, so that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to me because I said this during Killables, but the idea that the first miniseries, while very good, was very much kind of like, oh, what if the zombie thing attacked the DC universe, and it was almost all the obvious beats just to do because whereas I feel like Unkillables and now this is actually like really exploring story potential after you've set everything up.
Yeah, the first one is I want to set up this world, so it's a story I have to tell to get there. But it seems like Taylor's way more interested in telling the story of survival, of like this is the world now, right? And this is how all the characters that we've got to know and love over years of fandom. How are they dealing with it? And then the fact that he's using Damien and John as this next generation, versus, you know, the typical next generation, you know, your Dicks and Wallies and that, who are a little bit older, who we think the mantle's going to, right? But the fact that we've jumped them to these guys, I think that's really interesting.
Makes a lot of it hurt more, but I think what this sort of solidifies for me in a very specific way, and it's something I've always had the sense of from Taylor, is that he just kind of gets it. He gets what we fall in love with and what we love about comic books and characters, because it would have been very easy, because so much of DCeased world, barring John and Damien, is very Silver Agey in terms of it's, you know, it's all these, or not even Silver Agey, maybe just pre Flashpoint, right? It's post-crisis kind of world. With a lot of that continuity seemingly intact, give or take. But John and Damien are there, right? And we have this idea of John being Superboy, and the fact that he's mixed those things together it feels like he gets what we love about everything from pre-Flashpoint. But then there's also these elements from Rebirth that we also love, that we've grown attached to, and it's mixing all these things together. It just feels like there's a nuance there where it's not just black and white. It has to be this era or that era. It's like no. There's clearly things from every era that have stood the test of time. New 52 being the one exception where I don't really want anything from it. But like,
I know there's some decent stuff from New 52.
We've had this debate before. We're not doing it again.
This, and Pete's a terrible person.
Yeah, there's some stuff. I don't want all of it. I feel like a lot of the stuff from Rebirth we would have got to, you know, the John, the Damiens, and whatnot over time. Versus stuff of the New 52 is just a sidetrack that you didn't have to go on. You know, National Lampoon's Vacation style. You're like, oh yeah, we did all that, and the car is destroyed now. Versus
Damien's like an easy one to point out. No, we would have got here. John is a little murkier, right?
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, he did come from Convergence. Like, that was where Jurgens planted those seeds. So yeah, you can make the argument, but I also still feel where we were, it was just natural for Lois and Clark to have a kid.
Yeah. I mean, anyway, it wasn't the point of what I was saying is not to go into, you know, what eras gave us. It was the point was just that Taylor seems to get and understand kind of what works from each era, whereas DC editorial, every time it does do a Flashpoint or a Crisis or whatever, does seem to want to reshape things and just wants us to forget about certain things, and that's what makes certain things so frustrating. Whereas here, I feel like Taylor taps into all of it. So I guess what I'm saying is that he's a fan first, and that kind of shines through everything he writes. So yeah, and here's Saints Art. You know, here's Saints Art. It was the same as it was in the original.
I feel because it felt more familiar. Like I feel it was a little bit more clean and whatnot. Like it wasn't, or maybe because there was not as much zombie stuff, it wasn't of that scratchy style, you know. But it felt different. So good.
It was the odd face maybe here or there, but overall, all the important beats especially really landed. Like Dinah crying as she flies off with the sword towards Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
great moment.
Yeah. All right, Matt, what are you giving DCeased Dead Planet issue 1?
I'm gonna give this a 9.
Connor?
Yeah, 9.
Yeah, 9. All right.